Guruve Gaura Chandraya Radhikaya Tadare Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadabhaktaya Namo Namaha Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhaivacha Patitana Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Shri Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Dhanavad Pranam devotees. So I am, this is not really a question and answer session, but more it's a discussion that I had with someone. And they did ask a question in the context of our discussion, but primarily there was a overall discussion around a particular topic, and the topic was Kirtan Melas. So within our Vaishnav Mandal, and it has been for hundreds of years, that there's always been Kirtan festivals or Kirtan Melas. So it is not something that's new, but the particular devotee was discussing, and in the course of discussing, inquiring about having the Kirtan Melas in the way that we kind of have them now. Some of them where the Kirtaniyas are mixed groups of people, some being perhaps Mayavadi, some being perhaps just into music, and they're presenting as part of their musical presentation, they're presenting Kirtan as part of that, and then also having some devotees in there, and those devotees being of various adhikars in relation to Bhakti. And so the discussion was generally what was my feeling about that. So I always like that I should not have my own personal opinion presented in terms of anything that's being discussed publicly, unless I state previously while discussing it that this is just my opinion. Other than that, the template of Guru, Sadhu and Sastra and Sadhu Vakya, the saying of our acharyas, is prominent in considerations about anything that I would present in public. So in this regard, the idea of Kirtan Melas, and there's actually a tape I think called Kirtan Mellows, I keep getting confused. But Kirtan Mela, it depends so much on what is the understanding of Kirtan. So obviously Harinam, the holy name, Vaikuntha Nama Sesha Agam Haram Vidu, even if it is chanted Sankyat Parihasam Vastobam Helanava, even if it is chanting jokingly without proper intention, if it is chanted with the syllables in reverse order, Helanam, if there's even neglect of the actual nature of Harinam and it's strictly a musical presentation, in any of these ways, that kind of Nam Abhas, right, is still highly beneficial to the degree that Shastra says that unlimited sins, Asesha Aga Haram Vidu, can be destroyed just by this Nam Abbas. So there's no question that Harinam, under any condition, under any circumstance, is beneficial in some way, form, or fashion. The question then becomes, looking at the nature of Kirtan Melas in regard to our own inner development in Bhakti. So in that regard, there could be some things to consider. So one thing to consider is first to understand what have our acharyas described as Kirtan. So the acharyas describe Savot Bhavena Kirtan. Savot Bhavena Kirtan means that Kirtan which is replete with the bhavs that have come about from realizations in regard to Srinam, and regard to Nami, Shri Krishna and Radha and their associates, and the Dham, etc., etc. So Sarvat Bhavena Kirtan means that Kirtan which is replete with that kind of understanding and realization. When that Kirtan is presented in a mela, in any small grouping, wherever it is presented, the immense benefit that comes from the inherent nature of the realizations of the Kirtaniyas can do more to stimulate our growth in Bhakti than the simple Nam Abhas that may be present in general Kirtan melas or Kirtan festivals, etc. So again, just to be clear, it is not a discouragement about Kirtan festivals or anything like that. It is an affirmation that first, in the deeper mood of doing Kirtan, we want to have an understanding. Just like it's expressed that Krishna's name and Krishna are non-different. But how one will realize this is through hearing the Hari Katha, which is the Swarup of Harinam. So this was mentioned by Srila Bhakti Saraswati Thakur himself. He mentioned that Harinam without Hari Katha is not complete. Because Hari Katha is the Swarup, it is the intrinsic reality of Harinam. So I've given an example many times before that if someone knocks on your door and you open the door and you can see a person's form, you can, by your external senses, understand perhaps the racial makeup, the gender makeup, the height, the weight, etc. You can analyze so many things from an external point of view about that person. But no real relation is developed with that person because there's no understanding of who that person is. There's no understanding really, except for surface understanding of what that person wants, what's your relation to that person. But when the person opens up and begins to speak and they begin to tell you, oh, my name is so-and-so, I come from this place, I have a relation with you via some familial connection, I've traveled this far. All this different information that comes about now gives intrinsic understanding of the inner reality of that person, whom you could only digest by your external senses before that point of them revealing things about themselves. So once you do hear their revelation about who they are, and you're able to make a connection, oh, this is my cousin who's traveled from this place and has come to see me, and so forth. Then a sambandha, a relation, takes place truly, and dealings that you have with that person henceforward carry a different mood and meaning and everything else. So in the same way, when we hear the Hari Katha coming from Srimad Bhagavatam and other Sastra about Krishna, then when we're singing or when we're performing Kirtan of Krishna's Naam, then automatically the Rup, Gun, Parikar, Leela, and other things which we've heard in Hari Katha become a substantive part of that experience. If those things do not generate in the heart during the time of Kirtan, the natural sort of organic response to Kirtan will be, how does it sound? Is it pleasing to the ear? Is the rag and the tal of the Kirtan aesthetically pleasing? You understand? So now our relationship with Harinam becomes different. It becomes about the sensual experience, because the intrinsic qualities we talked about, they don't immediately rise in the heart. So therefore the external experience that our senses can capture is what becomes prominent. And therefore that's why you don't really find that they invite Kirtaniyas who don't have the ability to produce aesthetically pleasing rag and tal, right? Whereas if the inner reality is there, the external nature of the Kirtan, its rag and tal and the aesthetically pleasing nature of it doesn't become prominent. It doesn't mean that one should not endeavor to have pleasing aesthetics around Kirtan. I'm not saying that. I'm trying to cover all bases at once. But that is not the prominent feature of Kirtan. The prominent feature of Kirtan is what bhav is present, what realization is present in that Kirtan. And therefore those who have any maturation in Bhakti, their gravitation will be towards having their moods stimulated by understanding the nature of that Kirtaniya to be high-class Vaishnava. That Vaishnava who's doing Kirtan, aesthetically pleasing or not, is full of bhav, has deep mood regarding realizations of Sri Radha Krishna. So when they're singing Hare Krishna, those moods become stimulated in the heart of the hearers. And this exchange is called Sravan Kirtan, this exchange. If it is simply the aesthetics of rag and tal, then it would not matter whether the person is a professional concert performer or whether it's an aspirant in devotion, or now in many cases in a mixed kirtan melody, they may be mayavadi, void of any kind of understanding of bhakti or anything else, but if they're aesthetically pleasing, it becomes socially pleasing and acceptable to be in that kind of kirtan. So therefore it is important to kind of develop a kind of internal metric about the nature of what kind of kirtan mela am I participating in. If it becomes simply about the aesthetics of rag and tal, then it won't be as nourishing to the inner growth of your bhakti. It may be auspicious, it may be have some piety, it may give some sukriti, right? But if you have been in bhakti for some time and your aim and objective is now to try to advance in bhajan, and by bhajan the anarthas will be removed, and then nishta will take place, and then ruchi will come, right? Because even in ruchi, in Madhurya Kadambini, this point that I'm bringing up now is clearly mentioned there. What is Vastu Vaishishta Apekshaniya and Vastu Vaishishta Anapekshaniya in ruchi? So what I mean by those terms is Vastu Vaishishta. What is the speciality of the external aesthetics of a particular thing? So in this case, we're talking about kirtan. What are the external aesthetics of that kirtan? Is it rag and tal pleasing? So in the very beginning of ruchi, that might be a consideration. But when your ruchi matures, vastu vaishishta anapekshaniya, then there's not a consideration of the external aesthetics of the kirtan, but rather what is the depth of the mood in that kirtan becomes prominent. You understand? And therefore we relate to kirtan more to the inner mood of the kirtaniya, more than we do to the external quality of vocal pleasing quality, or the ability of the mridanga and karta or harmonium to be very nice. So we relate what is the mood in that kirtan. You understand? So I have the firm conviction, so now I'm stating a personal opinion, separating from speaking in sadhu vakya or etc., that really any significant kirtan mela has to be a part of Sravan mela. So you cannot have kirtan without doing Sravan, right? So you have to hear Hari Katha, and then kirtan should become the outgrowth of hearing Hari Katha. Almost you can relate this as well to the attendance of various events like Rath Yatra. Every year around the time of Rath Yatra, I think it should be a very important feature that the katha and the deep katha of the meaning of Rath Yatra should be discussed in all the temples. And they should have maybe 1 week building up, explaining the deep meaning of Rath Yatra according to the vichar or conceptions of Sriman Mahaprabhu. Because the Rath Yatra, as it was done in Puri for many, many years, is not exactly what it is that Mahaprabhu revealed about Rath Yatra. So we should go to the Rath Yatra with that mood. Other than that, we'll be going to the event called Rath Yatra. This is every year in one major city or town. Then we bring out the deities of Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra. They go on carts. It's very festive. It's very colorful. There's prasadam distribution, so there's a lot of sukriti activity that goes on. And the kirtan again, Anybody who has very, very nice singing voice, and excellent mridanga players will line up, and then they'll come through the streets, and it'll be a big event, and we have a sense of performing a really powerful preaching activity, because now so many people are hearing the holy name. But we also have to think, so many people are hearing the holy name. What am I hearing? Right? After 20 years, 25 years, 10 years, whatever it might be, or 50 years in some cases, what am I hearing now in my participation with Rath Yatra? Krishna Vrajalana Jai E Bhavantra. Has this mood come in my heart that we're taking Krishna from Dwarka at Jagannath Temple to Vrindavan at Gundicha Temple? Is this the mood? Or is the mood that we're having this huge festival, a lot of prasadam is distributed, people are out, hanging out, it's a big social event? You understand? And it's a social event that I can enjoy guilt-free because it has some relationship to Bhakti. You understand? So, and again, no harm. Because if it's where the consciousness is at, there cannot be anything wrong about things when they're presented for the sake of serving Shri Guru and Krishna. So Rath Yatra is meant for that purpose, so it'll always have intrinsically the quality of trying to do Guru Seva and to try to preach the message of Mahaprabhu. But for devotees to grow in Bhakti, we have to take all of these things, whether it's a Kirtan Mela, whether it's Rath Yatra, and we have to start to apply a sense of application to our own growth in Bhakti. There has to be an application of what is the inner core, according to the conceptions of Mahaprabhu about these things. Mahaprabhu used to perform Kirtan in the Srivas Angan, in the courtyard of Srivas, throughout the entire night. What was the nature of that Kirtan? And that's the Kirtan that we're aspiring to go to, right? So if we don't practice inwardly aspirational mood for that kind of Kirtan, by understanding what is Kirtan, by understanding what is Harinam and what is Hari Katha, the Sarupa of Harinam, how will those things grow? How will it happen? So what will happen is that we'll become accustomed to fitting into our social dynamics and our social schedule events that we mark as religiously acceptable enjoyment. I'm going to go to the Rath Yatra. I'm going to see all my old friends. We're going to, mix it up, chop it up, and have discussions and enjoy ourselves. There'll be nice prasadam there and so forth and so on. We may get an opportunity to speak to some other people and, share our religion, so forth, so on. But same time, there has to be a sense of inner growth. I'm attending this event based on the fact that this is an integral part of Mahaprabhu's Leela. And Mahaprabhu, in this Leela, manifested so many moods which spilled from his heart. And our Srila Prabhupada has translated the work of Srila Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami, who took the notes of Swarup Damodar, Mahaprabhu's most intimate associate, and revealed all the deep meanings of Mahaprabhu's participation in this festival at Puri. So we want to try to imbibe that mood while attending that festival. That will be the most nourishing. That will give the most foundational steps to our growth in Bhakti. All the other things may be there, but the internal spiritual growth for ourselves will also be there if we take this mood in our approach. Both in a Kirtan Mela, we should consider how close is it to the mood of the Kirtan in the Srivas Angan. Does it have those moods? Savat Bhavena Kirtan. At the Rath Yatra, is it full of those moods of Mahaprabhu at Puri during the Rath Yatra? And the only way to establish these things is to do Hari Katha of them. If we don't do Hari Katha of these things, then only the external features of Kirtan Melas, of Rath Yatra festivals, etc. will be there. So it's a personal choice, but as I was speaking to this particular devotee, this was part of what we spoke about, and the fact that it would be much better, I believe, that if we're going to have a Kirtan Mela, that it should be based on having a Kirtan Sravan Mela, right? that there should be so much hearing of Hari Katha, perhaps during the daytime, and then throughout the evening, there should be Kirtan. Because now the outgrowth of what was heard and imbibed will now come out in the form of Kirtan, Harinam Kirtan. And so now the meditation won't be on attendance of a cool musical festival. It'll be an inner growth mutually among many devotees of internal growth in bhakti. Because throughout the day, devotees are sharing realizations. The meaning, the dati pratagrinati, guyamakyati prichati, bhunkte bhojayate jaiva, sadvidam priti lakshanam. Rupa Goswami identified 6 symptoms of exchange that have priti lakshan. They have the quality of love. Love you cannot find in the material world. Right? Kaitavam rahitam prema, na prema manushaloke. In the material world, among ordinary men and women, there is really no love. Kaitava, it is only a sense of cheating, because it is a reflection of real love that's exploited for self-interest, and therefore it becomes called love in the material world, but it's really exploitation in many cases, self-interest in other cases. But real love is not there. Even Rupa Goswami is given the real definition of love. Sarvatarahitam prema. No, what is this? Sarvata. Dongshakarane yat. Sarvata dongsarahitam. Yadapi dongshakarane yat bhava bandhano prema parikirtita. He gave this definition of love. Under no circumstances can love be broken. Sarvata dongsharaitam yadapi dongshakarane. Even if there's a so-called cause for the love to break, it doesn't break, it gets stronger. And brings the lover and beloved closer together. This is the real meaning of love in the true spiritual context. In the material world, we don't have an unconditional love that can't be broken under any circumstances. There may be some reflection of it in greater or lesser degrees, but there is no absolutely unconditional love in the material world. But Rupa Goswami identified 6 exchanges, the dati pratagrinati guyamakati prichati bhunkte bojayate chaiva sadvidam priti lakshanam. He identified 6 exchanges between Vaishnavas have priti lakshan. They have the quality of love. Why? Because those things, the dati pratagrinati, to give and receive. This is the real meaning here, essential meaning, to give and receive. Right? Or guyamakyati prichati, confidences. What you have realized, what I have realized, we're exchanging. This is bhunkte bojayate chaiva. This is the actual prasad in bhakti. Sometimes we hear this verse and we think it means only external gifts. I'll give you a gift, you give me a gift. We'll exchange confidences. And in many cases, unfortunately, this becomes rumor mongering. Okay, I'll tell you the secret thing I just heard. You tell me something, you're not that, And then bhunkte bojayate chaiva, then taking and honoring prasad. We'll cook for each other, so forth. This is also true. Not the rumor part, right? But really the meaning here is the dati pratagrinati. That gift which you hold most valuable is guyam akyati, prichati. The sharing of the internal realizations you have with someone whom you have enough love and affection and deep connection with that you can share your realizations and receive theirs. This is bhunkte bojayate chaiva. This is what should be tasted, therefore it is compared to offering foodstuff. Because the mood inside of those realizations, which should contain the elements of bhakti ras, can be tasted. So the real meaning of this verse is how to taste the extremely valuable gift of the exchange of internal realizations. This is the real meaning of this verse, or deeper meaning of this verse, right? So if we do like this before Rath Yatra, or if we do like this during Kirtan Melas, where there's Hari Katha during the day, and then by evening all devotees gather having heard so much Hari Katha, and having those moods churning in their heart, then those moods are stimulated by the wonderful and beautiful kirtans which are performed by so many devotees. Other than that, it will start to become, which in many cases it is, a concert of expertise in rag and tal from various personalities who then have some notoriety based on their ability to perform well. All right? So we don't want our kirtan to come to that level, right? Because for the kirtaniya, it will produce pratishta. For those who are hearing it, it will produce self-enjoyment mood. You understand? But if there's Hari Katha and Sri Krishna's Swarup is established in the central place, then the kirtan will be inspired by Krishna and his associates, Radha and Krishna and their associates being the centerpiece of the kirtan. Because now we're doing kirtan in glorification of the Swarup of kirtan, which we heard throughout the day. So my feeling, my opinion, based on Guru Sadhu Sastra and Sadhu Vakya, that any kirtan mela should have as one feature of it, Sravan mela, the hearing of Hari Katha. Other than that, there's the danger that kirtan will turn into, and this happened actually not long after the associates of Mahaprabhu in the second generation, Narottam Srinivas Shamananda, they developed kirtan styles like Manasai, Reneti, and Garanahati, these different styles of kirtan, and they became perfected by many performers, but later on, it turned into a simple, mundane sort of thing of kirtan performances. And there was no quality of bhakti. In fact, many of the kirtaniyas themselves were not even practices of bhakti. It was a performance. Like that. So, in fact, I think one person in Arjun Prabhu, he's mentioning in the chat that this is a thing that went on, right? And many Apasampradayas, Aul Bhaul, I haven't read his, I couldn't see the whole comment, but I would assume he's referring to Auls, Bauls, etc., that this became a whole Apasampradaya. So it is extremely important to infuse the Kirtan Mela with the conceptions of Mahaprabhu. So even when devotees sing different rags, different tals, there's some understanding. Is this Virohe mood? Is this Sambhog mood? Is this Virohe after Sambhog? Right? And so many genuine feelings in bhakti will come into the heart. Right? Because this is what we're aspiring for 30, 40, 50 years. We want that some actual substantive mood of bhakti will start to come in the heart. And then this will really be a kirtan mela. It'll really be a festival of true kirtan. Savat bhavena kirtan. Okay? So my humble expression based on a conversation I had with a devotee, which I thought was a really nice conversation, and hopefully everyone was able to understand it. It was certainly not any kind of disparagement in one sense of the general idea of kirtan melas, right? But it was to add substance and food for thought around doing kirtan melas, and I think it's especially helpful for those who are kirtaniyas because pretty much they become the leaders in these things, and then the organizers as well. That those who are organizing these festivals should think, because one thing will be there. If you think, oh, well, people don't want to sit through hours and hours of classes, well, then what are you doing? If you don't want to sit through hearing Hari Katha, what is the name you're chanting? In other words, if you're separating the, I don't want to hear anything about Krishna, but I want to sing about Krishna. How is that logical? How does that make sense? I don't really want to hear Hari Katha for 4 or 5 hours. Let's just do the kirtan all day. No, how will it be Sravan Kirtan, right? Some people say, no, it's Sravan Kirtan because we're chanting and you're hearing the name. But what are you hearing? Again, it's comparable to the analogy I gave earlier. Someone knocks on the door. We're all knocking on the door, but then we open the door and we just see a form there. Nobody really understands what's going on, what's the form, anything. How long will you keep that situation? Right? So nothing will come in the heart, right? No kind of mood, no kind of understanding, no anything. So you'll digest all of the various rags and tals and the sweetness of the singing voice as pleasure to your own ears. You'll digest it as enjoyment in the association of many friends who are also enjoying. So it becomes a kind of dovetailed material enjoyment arrangement. If there's Hari Katha, then everyone's heart will be illuminated, having heard different leelas, different tattvas, different siddhantas regarding Shri Krishna. And then in the evening doing Kirtan, all of those moods of Hari Katha will be brought up in the heart. They'll be stirred and they'll come back up in the heart. And then one will actually taste the mood of the rag and tal in relation to the Hari Katha they heard. This is really Kirtan Mela. Right? So anyways, hopefully this was helpful food for thought on discussion about these sort of things. All right, devotees, thank you so much. Dandavat Pranam. Oh, one last thing before I forget. I don't know how applicable this is to many devotees, but I'll say it here as I'm trying to keep reminding devotees. From the July 31st to August the 7th in South Florida, last year we did one, and this year from those dates, July 31st to August 7th, we will have another Bhakti Intensive. This year's Bhakti Intensive is the science of love. So we'll be discussing the nature of Bhakti and the nature of real love and how Bhakti is that real love and so forth, so on. So it's going to be 5 days, right? 4 days primarily of morning classes. And we're trying to see, because also our Shamarani Didi is in South Florida now, and so one of the reasons also we're doing this is to give devotees the opportunity to have her association. So we may have, last year we had class in the morning and in the evening. This year perhaps we'll have our morning class, and in the evening time we may take advantage to have the association at the Gaudiya Vedanta Outreach in South Florida, because where we're staying and where the outreach is very close. So we're working out all those sort of things. But at any rate, July 31st through August the 7th, the place where we are is called Weston, Florida. So if you want to contact me directly to try to figure out if you want to come directly to the facility we're staying, you can do that. Just inbox me. If you want to look at Airbnbs or hotels in that area, you can also do that. So if you want more information, just inbox me and send me your number. We could speak directly and I can give more details. I don't want to do but so much online here. All right, so again, thank you devotees for coming on. Thank you for your kind consideration in these matters, and hopefully it will be food for thought. And maybe as we go forward, devotees will bring this point up and say, hey, let's have a Kirtan Mela, but let's make the earlier part of the day Hari Katha Mela, Sravan Mela, and then in the evening, let's taste the Hari Katha, do Hari Kirtan, and then this will be really, really nourishing. Jai Vancha Kalpaturvescha Kripa Sindhavevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Radhe Radhe.